What is a Chief Information Security Officer? Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we will be exploring what is a Chief Information Security Officer. And with me to do that today is my returning co-host, Adam Twitty, and the Director of Solutions Research at Wh1t3 Rabbit, Rafal Los.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, how are you doing this fine evening?
I am brilliant.
All right, so let's go ahead and just kick it off, get right into it. What is a Chief Information Security Officer, otherwise known as CISO?
So your CISOs, this is sort of varied, right? It's kind of like there's no cookie cutter, but what a CISO generally aspires to is it's the lead role responsible for the information security or cybersecurity aspect of an organization. In some organizations, this person is a director. Some of them they're a VP. Some of them they're an actual executive, which is hence the confusion behind the Chief Information Security Officer. It's still pretty rare to find security as an officer of the company. So it's just, I guess it's kind of more of a cosmetic thing. But yes, it is. It's the person responsible for the corporate welfare and well-being on the cyber side, ish.
So who should fill the CISO role?
Well, how much time you got? So depending on who you ask, this is one of those questions that's been debated more times than I've got time to rehash. But essentially there's two schools of thought. Either the information security leader, director, VP, CISO is somebody that came up through the ranks, started as a engineer, pen tester, moved up, became from a practitioner to a manager, or a business executive that becomes knowledgeable on security matters and joins an organization to lead that effort. Those are two very divergent schools of thought, and it's like starting a holy war over when you ask that question out there. A couple of years ago, I started it, and I think about 500 tweets later, we were no closer to the solution or the answer. But boy, lots of people got angry.
So, I mean, it sounds like the CISO, who should fill that role and who, where they should report is still very much up for debate. What needs to be done to kind of get there to kind of define the role a little bit more? Or is it more of you said, and I think you said it earlier, is that it's not really a cookie cutter spec. So, I mean, how do you approach defining that role?
Oh, raspberries. Essentially, look, it really matters how that's defined at the organization you work for matters. It's directly related to the kind of company profile you have. So if you are if you're a financial company, you'll probably be a VP, or I guess everybody's a VP, but you'll be an officer, right? Hopefully. If you're if you're like industrial manufacturing, you'll have a background in that company. You should at least have a background in that company in the market that you're in, the market space that you're in, and I think requires a tremendous amount of leadership skill, the ability to convert complex technical thought and ideas into business speak, and the mythical unicorn of understanding risk, which, let's face it, it's like a friend of mine says, like sex in high school, everybody talks about it, but nobody can actually do it. There's a whole lot of different ways to set up information security, CISO, but I really think that the definition of one or how it's defined in that organization really depends on what the company values and what's important to them, and how do you think you're going to fit in. It's a fit question more than anything, honestly.
Adam, did you have any questions? You want to just keep rolling?
Keep rolling. I have a few questions, but I want you to keep going for the moment.
Okay. So why does an organization need a CISO in the first place?
That's a darn good question. Well, organizations need somebody that is chiefly responsible for it's kind of the person that is the buck stops here for the technology side of the risk equation. So somebody that handles enterprise risk management from a technology perspective, right, that reports into ERM or adds into the ERM function. You need a CISO to be the person that is strong-willed to basically be able to stand and be accountable, right? But also have the wherewithal to make the tough decisions on what's necessary, what's not necessary. How do you define necessary and proper? How do you know when you've done enough? How do you define good enough? How do you know when you've spent enough on security? Those types of topics. Those are your roles and responsibilities. It's certainly not a simple thing.
Would it be better, in your opinion, to promote a CISO from within, or kind of go outside and get the right person for the job? And I know you said that they have to have some kind of experience within that organization's function.
Or
what's that?
Well, I was going to say, or does it depend on whether or not there's been a CISO there before?
So if there's been a CISO there before, I don't know if that really matters. Certainly you have a much bigger challenge if there's not been a CISO there before. But that's not to say that I haven't met several CISOs, that I personally know that have taken the job and realized the person before them was either a hand puppet or sort of Casper the Friendly Ghost, where they're just they're there but nobody cares and nobody can see them and they're basically invisible. That's challenging, right? So I would say it's tough to be the outsider, because part of it, those that work in security already know, unless you simply don't care about the organization you work with and you want to keep your head down and pen test, and that's all or hack or whatever it is that you do. But if you work in an enterprise, you have to care about corporate politics, whether you like it or not, right? Whether it's a company of 10 people or 10,000, corporate politics is always there. Who reports to who, where the power center is, how to talk to this person to get them to convince this other person to do this thing that you want them to do but they don't want to do, that kind of stuff. There's always the challenge of coming in and being the new guy. In some certain cases, it's great to be the new guy because everybody will, it's like nobody believes, the internal person could be saying it for 5 years. The consultant comes in and says it once and it's gospel. Sometimes that helps, right, to be the outsider. But I would say you're probably, I think you're probably better off being promoted from within, under the assumption that you've got some business experience and you have a good technical savvy.
Okay, so so I guess coming in, say if you're new, or I guess even if you're promoted, what kind of powers, and I don't really like the words powers, but maybe leverage, does a CISO need to be effective? Or what kind of backing? Is this something that the CISO or the executive or the CEO needs to be on board, or can they effectively work? Is it kind of up to them as far as being persuasive?
So the kinds of things that a CISO has to be able to do, or the kind of responsibility. So you have to have two things: capability and responsibility. You have to be held accountable, which oftentimes isn't too hard. But if you're going to be held accountable, you have to have the ability to catalyze change. And that's the harder part. So there's a couple of skills that are first and foremost. One, communications. You have to be a communications genius, which means you have to be a PowerPoint ninja. I mean, there's no other way to say it, right? It's in a corporate environment. So you have to understand communications. You have to understand management. You have to understand risk. You have to understand enough. My personal opinion is you have to understand enough about information security from a technology perspective to know that your team is the people that work for you are doing the right things. You don't have to go in, and I don't think the CISO should really, in any reasonably large company, have to be able to break into anything or demonstrate any kind of hacking prowess or anything. I think it's nice. I think it's a nice to have, and I think it's great that some people have that. I just don't think it's necessary. I think you really have to have the communication skills, tremendous leadership skills, risk an analytical mind. And obviously, information security awareness and context, so you know what the hell's going on, and that and the ability to make decisions based off of data, and to gather the right data and to measure and to quantify, right? So that there's a lot of skill set there, but that's kind of, I guess, the difference between a manager and a leader. If you have a good manager, people do what they say. If you have a good leader, they lead by they lead by example. So and being able to make the right changes. And sometimes the answer is we shouldn't do this. Even though it's probably the security person in me wants to say yes, do this. The realist in me says no, it's not. Let's pick a different battle. So it's also knowing when to pick your battles and how to pick them.
Adam, do you have a question?
I was just going to comment on the fact that we struggle with some of that occasionally at work, where yes, we could do this thing, and yes, it will improve security some at the agency, but there are half a dozen other things that we could do that are far better, and we end up losing those battles occasionally, and it's a little frustrating.
Well, so that's the thing, right? I think it's been a decade or so that the role of CISO has been evolving, and for a long time, and I think this is going away, which is great. I'm grateful for it. But for a long time, security became the department of no. People just expected that security people would show up and go, nope, can't do that. You're an idiot. Don't even think about it. And so they've grown to avoid us. They've grown to laugh at some of the crazy, outrageous things you say. I mean, I wrote a blog post on my old HP blog a while ago that's about Windows XP and sort of the risks that it poses by the people, but that's the fact it's still out there, right? It's kind of like sending an unvaccinated child out into the world when there's a preventable disease, whatever. The responses that I got, because somehow it made it into CNN or something, one of those little feeds they have at the bottom, the responses that I got just demonstrate that we in security have a long way to go, because half the people out of the 50 some odd comments, which is incredible, right, are telling me that I'm a corporate shill, that all I'm trying to do is make them pay extra for a new operating system, and theirs is perfectly fine because their antivirus keeps updating. And because their antivirus keeps updating, they think they're great and they're fine and they're secure. They don't connect to the internet, and they don't do any kind of questionable surfing. And I'm reading these, going, part of me wants to smack my head into my desk until I stop twitching. The other half of me is going, you created this, and it's painful to make that realization. To be honest, because it's not. I don't know. It's not. It doesn't feel great, right? This is our own beast that we've created in security. We've the Department of No thing has gone too far. Now we got to swing it back the other way. We got to start getting real with people and letting them know that that we understand the plight, what they're going through. We understand what they're trying to accomplish, and we are trying to be realistic in helping them. It's just really tough.
Yeah, we're not the bad guys. We're actually there to try and help them do it in a secure way.
It's less about no and more about no, not that way, but this way over here.
It's guide and protect, or it's accommodate and protect, right? So, I have this kind of nutty analogy that you guys might like, maybe you don't, but it's you pour water down a hill, it will find the path of least resistance, right? It's just gravity plus the way it works. People will find the easiest way to get their job done. And if you make it difficult to do it in the secure, corporate approved way, so the ultimate idea here, example of this is, you can force them to do get a corporate device, right, in a handheld, do MDM, mobile device management, so you can have the ability to just shred their phone and at any point read all their text messages, look at their pictures, and do all that, coordinate their apps, blah blah blah. Or, as most people quickly figure out, you can simply connect to the corporate exchange server, right, via ActiveSync from your own device. Via an app like Touchdown or one of those third-party apps, and magically you've bypassed all the corporate sandboxing stuff. Ta-da! You win. So guess what people are going to do, right? Yeah. If you give them the option of using 27-step process that takes 3 days to share large corporate confidential files, they'll install Dropbox and do it in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And anybody that tells me, no, we don't do those kinds of insecure cloud things, give me 5 machines and I'll point out 4 of them that are.
Yeah. I think any information security professional is very aware of what exactly you're talking about. To kind of steer it back towards the actual CISO role, though, and you've talked about some of those things, and all this we're talking about is kind of just communicating and giving organizations a better way of doing that. And you said that the CISO needs to be well-rounded. So what is the most important skill to you that a CISO needs?
Communications.
Communications, okay.
Just the ability to communicate effectively. And I prioritize that, and I'm sure I'm going to get some crap for this, but I prioritize that over all your security and risk management skills, because even if you're fantastic at security and risk management and you are the best security and risk management person ever to walk the face of the earth, and you can't communicate that for crap to the people that you work for, all they are is all you are to them is, if you've ever watched Peanuts, you are the wah 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 hackers wah 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 hackers wah wah in the background. That's all you are. Understand that. Make your peace with that. And the sooner you do that, the more effective you'll be.
So what does a CISO? What kind of experience does a CISO need to kind of improve that communication skill?
So I've oftentimes told folks that want to get into security that I took the long way, right? I started out building white box PCs, so doing hardware stuff, and I worked at a help desk. I then went into networking and systems and support and applications and all the other, and I was even the world's worst developer for like 5 minutes. But once you sort of get all that, you're about halfway there. I then very briefly did a stint while at a large company. I was a business analyst for a while, right? I kept my infosec job, but I moved over to the business side and did a business analyst role. And I tell you what, nothing will teach you how to communicate with people that you just can't quite get into their heads like having to do their jobs, because then you're communicating with people like you and they don't understand what you're saying. You're like, I don't get it. All I want you to do is connect this to this. That's all I want. I don't want a 37-step, 7 weeks approval. I just want this to connect to this. This route from this IP address to this IP address, just make this happen. And you're hearing, well, it's going to take this, this change and 3 processes. And you're like, how is this effective? And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I guess I'm not communicating effectively, am I? Right, and that's the thing. That's why I say communication is so critical, because there's great managers and great leaders. Leaders know how to communicate.
So what? And this is the final question here. What are the different types of CISOs that you see out there?
Good ones and bad ones. No, just kidding.
I kind of figured you might go that route. It's a very open. If you want to end it there, that's fine.
No. There's. I'll do this one quick. So I think there's no such thing as I've never met a truly, well, that's not true. I have met a couple bad CISOs, but I've met CISOs that are all well-intentioned but simply are overwhelmed by the business side. I've met CISOs that are overwhelmed by the security side. I've met some really, really smart people that are great communicators, just in really bad situations where nobody cares. But I think there's 2 categories: those that are effective and those that are not, right? And those that are effective have those good traits. Those that are not effective tend to pout a lot, cause a lot of drama, and complain about their how nobody listens to them a lot.
That's good.
I think that's a fair assessment.
I think that's a great point. And that question could have been, what makes a good CISO versus a bad CISO too. So,
yep.
I think that's a good point to end on. And that will do it. Hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, drop me a line on Twitter at TimothyDBlock or email me at timothy.dblock@gmail.com. And let me know what you didn't learn, and we'll try to cover it in a future podcast. That's going to do it. Have a good one.